Alex and Harper never believed in the stories about sleep paralysis until the night their own bedroom became a prison. Frozen in their beds, eyes wide, hearts racing, they realized the darkness wasn't just around them. It was inside them, and whatever it was hungry for more than fear. I always thought sleep was a refuge, a place where my mind and body could finally rest. But that night, it felt like a trap. I had been exhausted all day, my eyelids heavy, my muscles aching, yet as I lay in my dark bedroom, something in the air made it impossible to relax. The silence felt wrong, thick and pressing, like it was listening, waiting. I drifted slowly toward sleep, but my body didn't follow. My limbs were heavy, rigid, refusing to respond. My chest felt like it was being pressed down by a weight I couldn't move, and my mind began to panic. I tried to call out, to move my arms, but my mouth wouldn't work. It was as if my body had disappeared, leaving only my awareness trapped in my bed. The shadows in my room began to shift in strange, unnatural ways, stretching across the walls in shapes that made no sense. They seemed to bend toward me, flowing like liquid, twisting and stretching as if they were alive. I wanted to look away, but my eyes were fixed, powerless, and I could feel a presence in the room that wasn't mine. It was heavy and cold, pressing against me in a way that made it impossible to breathe. I sensed it near the doorway, a shape darker than the darkness itself. It didn't move like a human. It seemed to hover, leaning forward slightly, waiting for something. I felt an overwhelming sense of dread fill my mind. There was a whisper, low and soft, brushing the edge of my thoughts. It was impossible to place, as if it came from inside me, yet not me at all. The words didn't form, but the meaning was clear. It knew me. It could see me. It wanted me. My chest tightened even more, my heart racing, but I still couldn't move. I could feel the temperature drop, icy fingers brushing my skin, crawling slowly across my arms and neck. My mind screamed for help, but no sound emerged. Then I saw it, or maybe I imagined it, but I couldn't deny the shape hovering closer. Its form was vague, yet somehow unmistakable, a mass of darkness, twisted and misshapen, with eyes that weren't human, burning into me. I wanted to blink, to shake, to wake up, but I was locked in place, unable to escape. I could feel its presence pressing down, suffocating, hungry. Every instinct told me to run, but my body remained useless. When morning finally came, I awoke with a gasp, my body sore and trembling, drenched in sweat. The room looked normal, the shadows gone, yet something lingered. In the corner, on the floor near the doorway, was a small handprint. Dark, cold, and slightly wet. I lived alone. No one had been there. I stared at it, frozen, realizing that sleep, the one place I had trusted, had betrayed me. That handprint remained long after I cleaned the room, a silent reminder that whatever visited me in the night was still here, watching, waiting for the next time I closed my eyes. The next night I tried to convince myself that what happened before was just a nightmare, a trick of exhaustion. I kept the lights on, stared at my phone until my eyes ached, but when I finally closed them, I felt the same dread settle over me like a living thing. My body grew heavy again, stiff and unresponsive. I knew before it began that I would be trapped, that the paralysis would come for me once more, and with it, that same suffocating fear. The shadows seemed different this time. They moved with a purpose, stretching across the walls in ways that made no sense. It wasn't just darkness. It was alive, writhing and whispering in a language I didn't understand. I could sense the presence near my bed again, closer this time, almost hovering over me. I could feel its breath on my face, cold and putrid, like decayed earth mixed with something metallic. My heart raced, pounding against the weight pressing my chest, yet I could not move. Then I noticed the floor. Where before there had been only the single handprint, now there were many, crawling across the carpet like black ink spreading over paper. They were small, human-like, but too dark, too defined to be anything ordinary. I wanted to scream, to tear myself free, but the paralysis held me fast. The shadows seemed to reach for the prints, like they were feeding them energy, growing stronger with every second. I felt a soft scratching, faint at first, then louder, coming from the corners of my room. It was slow, deliberate, like fingernails dragging along wood, surrounding me from all sides. The whispers returned, low and insistent, brushing against my thoughts, pressing suggestions of terror and pain into my mind. I wanted to look away, to close my eyes tighter, but the figure drew my gaze like a magnet. It wanted me to watch, to witness, to feel the fear. I sensed movement around the doorway. The shape was vague, nothing human, yet it leaned forward, stretching toward me. I could make out nothing except its eyes, or the sense of eyes, unblinking and void-like, burning into me. The handprints on the floor seemed to shift toward me as if crawling, tiny fingers reaching for my feet. My chest tightened even more, and the room felt smaller, walls bending inward as if I were inside a coffin. The room appeared normal, the shadows gone, yet the handprints had not disappeared. They were smudged, blurred but unmistakable, scattered like tiny warnings across the floor. I couldn't explain them. I lived alone. No one else had been there. And yet I could feel it, the presence, still lingering in the room, patient and watchful, waiting for the next night. I realized then that this was no dream. Whatever had found me in the darkness was real. It wasn't just visiting, it was learning, growing, feeding. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that it would return tonight, stronger and closer than before. By the third night, exhaustion had taken over me completely. I hadn't slept properly in days, my body shaking from fatigue, my mind frayed and desperate. Yet when I finally drifted into the edge of sleep, the familiar weight returned, pressing down on my chest, locking my limbs in place, stealing my voice. I was trapped again, aware, terrified, but powerless. The figure didn't wait this time. It was already there at the foot of my bed, its form more distinct than ever. I could see jagged edges where its face should be, teeth that glinted in the darkness, and eyes that reflected nothing but emptiness. Its long limbs reached toward me, stretching in ways that no human body could. I wanted to look away, to close my eyes and wake up. But I couldn't. My mind was a cage, and it had the key. I tried to scream, tried to fight against the paralysis, but my body remained unresponsive. The figure leaned closer, and I could feel its breath across my skin, sour, metallic, like blood mixed with decay. Then, without moving its mouth, it forced images into my mind. I saw rooms I didn't recognize, hallways that twisted impossibly, and doors that opened into black voids. Faces I had never seen stared back at me, mouths frozen in silent screams. I wanted to close my eyes, to stop it. But the images kept coming, filling every corner of my mind with dread. It became clearer that this thing was feeding off my fear. Every heartbeat, every panic-filled thought made it stronger, larger, closer. I could feel it in my chest, a cold, heavy weight pressing down, and I realized that it wasn't just a shadow. It was alive. It had a purpose. It had been watching me, learning me, understanding my weaknesses. The knowledge made me feel exposed, like a fragile animal trapped in a cage it could never escape. I thought I saw movement in the corner of my vision, a reflection in the darkened window, perhaps, or something more sinister. In that brief moment, I glimpsed another version of myself, lying in bed, eyes wide open, staring directly at me. And over it crouched the figure, its grin impossibly wide, stretching inhumanly. I blinked, and the reflection was gone, leaving only the empty window. Morning eventually came, though it offered no relief. My sheets were twisted around me, damp with sweat, my body sore from the struggle my mind had endured. The floor was empty, yet I knew better. The figure hadn't left. It never left. And when I looked into the mirror, I caught the faintest shadow of it lingering behind me, even though the room appeared normal. It was patient. It was waiting. And I had the horrifying realization that I wasn't just a victim. I was a subject. Something studying me, learning me, preparing for something I couldn't yet understand. Whatever this thing was, it was evolving, and I feared what might come next, knowing that when night fell again, it would be closer, hungrier, and far more terrifying than before. By the fourth night, I had stopped pretending I could sleep safely. The exhaustion had left me trembling, my body on edge, and my mind full of dread. I left every light in the house on, the television humming, and every possible sound running, hoping the noise would keep the figure away. But I knew better. It didn't need the darkness. It had learned that I couldn't escape it, that I was trapped whether I slept or stayed awake. When I finally drifted into the fragile edges of sleep, the paralysis hit immediately. My body stiffened, useless, as if I had been replaced with a hollow shell. The figure was already there, crouched at the foot of the bed, its long limbs folded unnaturally. It moved silently, but I could feel its presence pressing against me like a solid wall, cold and insistent. I tried to breathe slowly, tried to calm myself, but it was impossible. It had grown bolder, more confident, and I was at its mercy. I felt something crawl across my legs, cold and wet, and my stomach turned with revulsion. My mind screamed, but my body stayed frozen. The shadows in my room no longer clung to the walls. They stretched across the ceiling, pooling in corners, inching closer with a fluid, deliberate motion. I sensed the figure leaning over me, and I could feel its whisper in my mind. Not words, but thoughts, twisted and invasive. It promised release if I gave in, if I surrendered, and I realized with terror that it didn't want to harm me. It wanted control. Then I saw it. In the window's reflection, my bedroom appeared warped, twisted, but what caught me was the other me, lying in the bed, eyes wide open and staring straight at me. And crouched over that version of myself was the figure, grinning with teeth too sharp, too long, a smile that no human face could hold. I blinked, and the reflection was gone, leaving only my own terrified eyes staring back at me. But I knew it had been real. I knew the figure could reach through mirrors, through reflections, into other versions of me, or maybe other dimensions entirely. The weight on my chest intensified, and I felt the tiny black handprints crawling along the walls and ceiling, moving closer like spiders hunting prey. I wanted to move, to throw myself off the bed, to run, but my limbs remained locked, and the figure's presence grew heavier, suffocating. Every heartbeat echoed in my mind like a drum of warning. When morning finally came, it brought no relief. The house was silent again, lights on, everything appearing normal, but I could feel it. The figure hadn't left. It lingered in the corners, in shadows, in reflections, in every small creak of the floor. I realized then that I was no longer just being watched. I was being studied, dissected in ways I couldn't understand, and I feared what would happen the next night, knowing that it had grown stronger, closer, and more patient than ever before. By the fifth night, I had stopped trying to sleep altogether. I sat in the living room, lights blazing, television on, every sound and distraction I could muster, praying exhaustion might keep the figure away. But I knew deep down it didn't need the dark anymore. It didn't wait for me to close my eyes. It had learned patience, understanding that I couldn't escape it even when I was fully awake. The unease started as a faint pressure in the room, subtle at first, like the air itself was heavier, vibrating with intent. Then I saw movement at the corner of my eye, shadows shifting unnaturally, stretching toward me, crawling across the walls with a slow, deliberate purpose. I knew I couldn't turn to look, yet my eyes betrayed me, snapping toward the bedroom door. It was open, though I was certain I had closed it. Darkness spilled into the living room like ink, pooling across the floor and creeping along the edges of the walls. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of exhaustion, that my mind was unraveling, but a cold, wet brush ran across my arm, and I knew the truth. The figure was here. It didn't just haunt my sleep. It had learned to invade my waking life. I could feel its gaze pressing into me, a suffocating weight that made my chest ache and my stomach twist in fear. Then I saw the handprints, not on the floor, not on the walls, but on the ceiling, crawling across it like inverted spiders, their tiny fingers stretching downward. The sight made me want to scream, but no sound came. I realized then that the figure had been teaching me something. The world around me was no longer safe, no longer solid. Every surface could become its playground, every reflection a window into its reach. I glanced at the television, its static flickering unnaturally, and froze. Reflected in the dark screen were dozens of faces. My own face, twisted, silent, eyes wide in terror. They weren't moving, but they were watching me. And then, one blinked. One of my own faces in the reflection blinked, and I felt a cold, creeping realization. It wasn't just observing me anymore. It had found a way to replicate me, to create versions of myself trapped in mirrors and screens, endless copies screaming silently, frozen in fear. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, knowing there was nowhere to run. The lights flickered, and for the briefest moment, I caught a glimpse of the figure standing behind me in the reflection, a grin impossibly wide, stretching far beyond the limits of a human mouth. Then the reflection shifted, and I wasn't alone in my own eyes. All the versions of me, each pressed against invisible glass, stared, and I understood with horror that my reality had fractured. I haven't slept since that night. I leave every light on, television running, doors locked, yet I can feel it everywhere. I sense it in the shadows, in the reflections, in the smallest movements that aren't my own. And sometimes, just sometimes, when the house is silent and the world feels empty, I see one of my reflections blink at me. Not me. Not human. Something else. I don't know if I'm still alive or if I've already become one of the trapped versions, staring silently from a screen somewhere, waiting for the next night to come.